Everybody, and my name is Deborah Byrne from Deborah Byrne Psychology Services, known across social media as DB Psychology. So you're very welcome to join me this morning when I'm going to talk about this week's blog, which is all about reframing our thinking about failure. Now, a lot of the times, and I think for most people, we were raised with the idea that if you failed at something, it was a bad thing, it was a negative thing. And we took on that point of view. And remember, it is just a point of view. But also then stress and anxiety and depression and mental health can also narrow our focus of, how we see the world and how we think. So at the moment, everybody's very stressed. So everybody's viewpoint can get very negative or get very narrowed and only be honing in on what's negative around us. We're failing to see the positives. So that is something we also need to be aware of. So what if you could change your thinking around what failure was? That would be pretty good. I think that would be a really good mind shift, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking to change, the way we think about failure altogether. Remember, you didn't come into this world thinking everything's a failure or failure is bad. It was implied that failure was bad. People that didn't know any better themselves showed you this path. So therefore, it's a thought process, and we can rethink it. We can change that mind shift. So of course, if we could reframe it, if we can shift that that mindset, then we can change our decisions. It's going to impact your learning and growth. It's going to increase your self-confidence and your resilience. And your learning. And we do learn all the way throughout our lives. We never stop learning as human beings. We never stop learning. That would also increase because we'd be seeing the learning from both the positive and, the negative, from the successes and the failures. And therefore, our cognitive distortions or our overthinking styles would go down. Our procrastination and our perfectionism would also go down. And we could let that go. We could, good enough would be good enough. So what would we do? We would stop. And we would take time to reflect, and we would think about what's going on. Because not everything about what happened, what we think of as the failure, was in fact a failure. We can learn from it, and it is better for us, it is more proactive for us to actually do that. So what kind of questions? In the first strategy I suggest, asking yourself to reflect on what happened. So the first question I suggest is what went well. But sometimes we have to start from the position of, okay, what deemed whatever it was a failure? What didn't go well? So when we sometimes we have to get that out. We have to blurt it out, write it down. This didn't go well. The project didn't go well. I completely sucked at that exam. Whatever it is, if we can get that out first, it kind of gets it out of the way. And then you can look at it. Well, hold on a second. Was everything so bad as I think? So then I can go back and ask that first question of what went well. And we also need to acknowledge the external factors, because it's not about everything that's going on inside of us. There were external factors that could have contributed, and there always are external factors that can contribute to something that's gone wrong. So we look at them, we acknowledge them, and we hand over some of the responsibility for what happened to those external factors. It's not that you're mitigating and going, oh, I made a mistake. It's not like, and I can hand it off to somebody else. It's not like that. You're taking ownership appropriately of what went wrong and going, okay, I made a mistake and I'm going to apologize and make amends if that's what I need to do. Or I see that, okay, certain things contributed to the project or whatever, the test or the exam, or it's not reaching a certain level of sales, or whatever it is you've been working on, and you think, oh, that was a disaster, that was a failure. So acknowledging the external is important. And then asking yourself the question, what can I learn from this? And that's very, very important. What can you actually learn from this? Because when we learn from something, then we don't repeat it. We don't repeat that mistake. We can move ourselves forward. And if you're not sure about, what went wrong here, ask others to contribute. Ask your support system. I've talked about the support system and how important it is. Ask for a mentor. If it's in work, talk it through with a mentor. But remember, these people have to be positive people. They have to be supporting you. It's a support system after all. And then, I say make a plan. The next thing is to make a plan. And these have to be actionable steps that you can use to, you've learned something from it, you've understand where you've learned, you've understand these external factors can contribute to it. So now you make your actionable steps. You take a plan and you go, okay, I can, I know that these external factors can happen again, so therefore, how can I work around them? And I make my plan to take actionable steps, proactive actionable steps. And the last step, and I think it's one of the most important ones though, is to celebrate it all. And that includes the failures, because we can learn from our failures. There's so many people, so many scientists, so many people out there, even in business, who have failed before they reach success. We have to acknowledge that too. So, you've learned something from that failure. You've acknowledged that something happened was outside your control or fed into what contributed to it. So celebrate it. It's very important to celebrate our successes and our failures. And don't withhold that celebration. So the next some strategies, other strategies that I suggest you do, other than the questioning everything, is to embrace the imperfection. I think we need to sit down and think about, well, am I holding myself up to too high a standard, and now therefore I am going to fail at everything no matter what, even though for other people I'm seen as successful, even though the project went off without a hitch, but it wasn't to my standard. So are you doing that? So we have to let go of that. We have to let go of the internal criticisms and the internal fears, and start to show compassion and self-forgiveness for ourselves and acceptance, and realize that the good enough is okay. We have to think about that. The other thing is not to allow your overthinking or your cognitive distortion patterns to take over. That is very, very important. And I have a blog on that. I have a video on that, on how, highlighting all those. Plus, I have quite a number of sheets that are up on my resource page that you can use to work through that, to work through the overthinking. And see, is that contributing to what way my mindset, and getting to reframe your mindset is very much important in this whole process. Because if you're caught up in that whole overthinking it or patterns of cognitive distortion, then it becomes very exhausting and very debilitating. It in fact becomes paralyzing. And when we're paralyzed, we don't move forward in a proactive way. We're constantly reacting. Or we just can't move forward at all. We're frozen in time. We're completely paralyzed. So it's far better and far more constructive, in fact, if we can recognize what our thought patterns are, and to then switch them around and use those, knowing that I'm going to think in a certain way, to switch them and go, okay, let's use this overthinking to find solutions instead. Set up worry periods in your day. Things like that. Use certain strategies that I've talked about in terms of overthinking and what you can use there. So think about that. Think about how I can switch to use that overthinking, to use my nervous energy to reframe towards being very constructive and finding solutions instead. The next thing I suggest is that you tune into your inner sage, or your inner voice. Sometimes you hear the word inner voice, but inner sage, because that inner voice can get quietened down and get, the volume can go down, and the overthinking can go up. So that's screeching and screeching. The criticism, the negativity, the internal fears are up here in volume, and then that inner voice that can rebalance that all out, gets very, very low down here, and we can't hear it at all. So meditating is a very a good way to do that. And you don't even have to sit down and do a formal meditation practice. 3 minutes of breathing exercises like the 7-11 technique spread out throughout the day. If we set up our regular cues throughout the day, then it is very helpful to go in, do our breathing, 3 minutes. It kind of resets the brain. It's like a reset point. It brings us back to a reset point. It quietens down all that negativity and criticism and everything that's taking over and screaming and shouting in your head. It kind of quietens it down. And if you can do that even small, 2 to 3 minutes every time you pop to the loo or something, just to refocus yourself, it allows that to rebalance, the volume in your head to rebalance. So therefore you can stop and actually hear what that critic is saying, and you can start to counter it. Because remember, that critic is not helping you. Those fears are not helping you. So it'll help you tune in more to the positive. And then when you hear the positive and you can counter the critic, we can find the actionable steps. We can find the solutions and move ourselves forward. We also have to communicate clearly with others and learn to say no. So learning your boundaries and setting those boundaries and sticking to those boundaries is going to be very, very important here. Learning to let go of the negative people. If you're trying to change your own mindset, then constantly coming up against negative people is not going to help you do that. So learning to let those go and build, as I said, build that positive support system. These people have to be positive. And I've told you about, I've talked about this before. So there is a video and a blog on it and a free worksheet as well if you want to work through that yourself at home. The next thing and I've talked about it a short time ago, was actually building your self-compassion. And I have a blog and a video, as I said, and worksheets on that on my free resources page at www.deborahbyrnepsychologyservices.com. Being compassionate with yourself, forgive yourself, and just accepting yourself for where you are, learning to trust that gut instinct is really important in honing and reframing your thinking around negativity, reframing your thinking about failure. It's so important that we build that into our lives, that self-compassion. We're great at sitting down and being compassionate with somebody else if they make a mistake, if they have a failure, and we'll sit down with them and we'll talk with them and we'll talk through possible solutions to help them. But when it comes to ourselves, we don't do it. Why? You've got to ask yourself, why am I doing that? Why am I my best friend? Why am I giving myself those solutions that I would give to a neighbor or even a stranger? Sometimes we would sit down and do that with them, but we're not doing that with ourselves. So you've got to question that. Why am I doing it? Why can't I do that? Because when you can do that, then you find the positive, actionable steps that you can take. So that's that for this week. Do check out, there's much more detail in the blog. I've put a link in the description. But also remember, my book, The Building Blocks of Self-Care, is actually a step-by-step guide on how to do this, on how to change your mindset. So it includes all the worksheets that you might need, and I'm going to pop a link in the description below if you want to check it out. I also have a group for mums. We're actually doing this type of work at the moment in the group. So if somebody wants to join us, and even if you're joining us right now, everything is in unit form. All these units that you can step into the first unit, take what you like out of them, and then work through it, a step-by-step process, all while you can also work with me. So if you are a mum and you need some help, let me know. I'll pop a description in the comments below of where you can find the link to the group. I also have a couple of slots open. So if you are looking for a therapist at the moment, and you want to work one-to-one with somebody, I have a couple of slots, only a couple of slots open at the moment. So if you are interested in that, you can look at the book now link on my Facebook page, which is at the top of this page. So if you want to do that, you can press that, click and make an appointment. But these are for therapy sessions. So if you are interested in finding a therapist, I have a couple of slots open. But remember, they'll go very quickly. So, you know, don't hesitate. Press that button if you want an appointment right now. So I'll leave it there. Thank you all for listening. And if you need anything else, or there's a particular topic you'd like me to cover, let me know. I'm very, very happy to do so. Pop a comment in the description below and the name of the topic, and I will cover it for you. Of course, if any of you have a question, pop a question into the comments below as well, and I'll try and get back to you on that one as well. So thank you all for listening, and I will see you all again next Saturday morning at 10 o'clock.